Hey everyone, this is my May wrap up. I read a total of 19 books, which was 6,697 pages. I listened to 5 hours and 47 minutes of an audiobook. I'm just going to go through and talk about all the books that I read. I read 14 physical books, 1 audiobook, so that means I read 4 ebooks. Of the physical books, I have 7 novels, 1 light novel, and then 6 manga volumes. I'll do this one really quick. I mentioned Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, Volume 5, in, I want to say March. I said I was going to finish it that afternoon and talked about it, and then didn't actually finish it that afternoon. I finished it in May. So, yeah, here we are. I'm going to go in order for the rest of all of them. I read a KU book called Drive Me Crazy. It's an F1 driver, sports writer, podcaster romance. His name is Blake, and he has a kind of shitty reputation after a bad season, but he's one of the best drivers on the circuit. And Ella had to leave her job as a podcaster and has gotten a new job as his biographer. He's very private, so he doesn't really want her around and prying into his life for the next year. He just doesn't want her to be involved and get to know him. They slowly get to know each other, and as she gets further into writing his biography, they start to develop feelings on both sides. They eventually start dating and do go semi-public with their relationship. She did leave her podcasting job to harassment and an assault. There is a flashback kind of later in the book, so just a heads up about that. The third act breakup does involve him revealing some of the things that she shared privately with him in a very public way. After the fallout of that, more women come out with similar stories, but I wish there had been a little bit more of a definitive resolution to the assault situation, that he was put in jail. I'm not sure if that's something that will get resolved in further books or if that's going to even be a plot point. So we'll see. There were also a couple times where transitions were weird. They would be talking about events for the next day in one paragraph, and then the next paragraph it would be that day without a page break or any sort of new chapter type thing. There were 2 or 3 instances of that where I had to be what? Okay. I mean, that's fine, but it was a little jarring a couple times where you'd be oh, okay, I guess we're here already. The banter was really fun, and it was cool. I had never read a Formula One racing romance before, so it was kind of cool to see what that lifestyle is like, and the relationship was really cute. I really liked a lot of the side characters, and there is mental health representation and therapy representation on his part, so that was nice to see. I would definitely read more from this author, and whenever the next book comes out, I think it's supposed to come out in the fall, I'll probably pick it up then. All right, so the next book is, of course, on the bottom of my stack. So the next book I read was What the River Knows by Isabel Ibáñez. This is the Fairy Loot cut. I think this was December, and it's very stunning. I like it a lot. The end papers aren't all that exciting. There's a girl and it's her hair. But then the naked hardcover is really pretty. And then this is the back with the crocodiles. And then dust jacket. So, yeah. This follows Inez. She lives in Buenos Aires with her aunt and her cousins, while her parents spend half the year in Egypt. And they regularly spend half a year in Egypt. So they are gone 6 months out of the year and are back with her the other probably 5-6 months of the year. One day she gets a letter from her uncle, who is her mother's brother. So the letter says that they got lost in the desert and were presumed dead. She has inherited their fortune slash estate with Ricardo, who is her uncle, overseeing it until she gets married, and then her husband will oversee it. But she feels like there are a lot of unanswered questions regarding their disappearance and everything about it. So she leaves Buenos Aires disguised as a widow and sails to Alexandria. Her uncle's assistant, Wit, meets her in Alexandria and tries to force her back on the ship so she'll return home. But she ignores him and continues on to Cairo, where she meets her uncle. Her father had also sent her a mysterious ring that she brings with her to Egypt. And when she gets to Cairo, her uncle is very dismissive of her and her feelings, and this goes on throughout the entire book. He won't tell her anything about what might have happened to her parents, and then Wit tries to keep her at arm's length, but an unsteady friendship develops as they deal with different situations together. The side characters are fleshed out well, both the likable and unlikable ones. The atmosphere is incredible in Buenos Aires, but especially in Egypt. I would like to go on a Nile cruise now. And you can tell that it was incredibly well researched archaeology and history wise. It's also a tribute to the city of Cairo and the country of Egypt as a whole. There are discussions of colonization that are framed in a pretty unique way, with the British occupying the country and exporting cultural items out of the country and basically controlling who is allowed to operate archaeological sites. Hint, it's not the Egyptians. And you also see some of the limitations placed on women at the time, like access to money and hysteria and, writing women off as unreliable. It was a really, I feel, probably accurate take on that. It's been compared to The Mummy and Death on the Nile. I would say Death on the Nile for the setting and being suspicious of everyone around you, but not much else. The Mummy sort of for the archaeological parts, but only sort of on the romance. The visuals for Rick and Evie are there, but the relationship feels a lot different. I also felt like very few of our questions got answered, and even more questions arose out of the whole thing. I wish Inez had just explicitly said to her uncle that she had met him once in her life before, so sorry if she didn't feel like she could trust him over what she knew of her parents. I wish she had explicitly said that, because then maybe it would have clicked for him and he wouldn't have continued to treat her like she was unreliable and untrustworthy and blah blah blah. There are some really positive things, like the atmosphere and the setting especially, but I'm kind of reserving judgment for the characters and the plot until I get my hands on the second book, which I think is supposed to come out in November. I enjoyed it overall, but I think I need to reserve final judgment to until I've seen it as a whole, because there were so many questions left unanswered that I was like, oh, okay, I don't know where this is going, and I don't necessarily know the relevance to our plot line and love interest situation. At the very end of the book, there was some stuff that came up, and you're like, oh, even more, even more questions and things that need to be addressed in the second book. So I am looking forward to it. I just think it's going to be a while, unfortunately. The next book that I read is Entreat Me by Grace Draven. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which is one of my favorite fairy tales. Ballard is the Lord of Kedektor, and Louvain is the elder sister of Sienna. So he and his son Gavin were cursed by Ballard's former wife, who died giving birth to Gavin. And Louvain is a no-nonsense kind of woman who doesn't let anyone take advantage of her family. She's a widow, and her father and younger sister live with her due to her father's business debts, And the shady man who holds the debts keeps trying to force their father to give him Sienna in marriage, since she is the most beautiful girl in town. There are no other options at this point, so she runs off with Gavin and he takes her back to Kedek Tor. Louvain follows and they spend the winter with the father-son duo and their remaining servants. If you're familiar with Beauty and the Beast at all, you can guess where this is going, but it's also like so well done. Grace Draven's characters have such a sense of maturity about them in terms of communicating with each other and like working through conflicts. Her books are always so well constructed in general, like writing wise. I would recommend if you like Beauty and the Beast retellings or if you like Grace Draven, it's definitely one to check out. Like there is a little bit of a twist on the normal, maybe Disney version of the story, but like it still involves like a curse and that sort of thing. So I got this and the next book, which is Master of Crows, from the Arcane box, which is I think is part of the Mystic Box company. They had like this was part of their subscription and they had like an extras sale. So I was like, all right, sign me up. And it's so pretty. And like the edges are foiled. So the back of the book has that. And there's like a little stained glass rose. And then you can see it in on the end papers. I think the end papers are the same. Yeah. And they're just naked hardbacks and just so pretty. This is the Master of Crows edition that came with it. You can see that there's roses on this one. And like you can see them kind of on there and like the thorns and stuff on the foiling on the back. But the flower that is predominant in this is the orange blossom, because he has a grove of oranges, and you can see it like on the back as well. This book follows Silhara, who is the Master of Crows, and Martise. Silhara is a powerful mage, and he is under attack from the god called Corruption, who manifests as a star, which, there we go. He calls for help from the Conclave, which is a group of like mage priests that want to bring Silhara to heal. He's slightly unorthodox, and so they think he is just this terrible heathen, like out to destroy them. Martise is a slave of one of the leaders of the Conclave, and she agrees to go spy on him in exchange for her freedom. He knows that she is a spy, like he expects that from them, but he needs all the help he can get if he's going to defeat Corruption. As they hunt for a solution, they slowly fall in love, and Martise has to decide if her freedom is worth his life, and he has to decide if his life is worth her soul. I don't know if I loved the relationship as much in this one as I did in Entreat Me, but it was still just beautifully written, like all of her books are. I really enjoyed that atmosphere and adventures that they go on. I liked Martise a lot as a character and how she like really grew into her own voice throughout the book and kind of like learned her self-worth, understood her worth overall. So I would, again, if you like Grace Draven, would definitely recommend. I think there are a couple like short stories that she has that kind of connect Master of Crows and Entreat Me somewhere down the line. I don't really know. I haven't read them. I need to pick them up at some point, but that's okay. I did take a break between these books, but I'm going to talk about Kingdom of Ash next. This is the final book in the Throne of Glass series. I do talk way more in depth about this in part 2 of my Throne of Glass completion video, which is probably up by the time this goes up. I don't know. Yeah, so I did think this wrapped up major plot points well, but there were a lot of things that were kind of introduced earlier that got left behind. Some of the deaths at the end were very unnecessary. Some like felt like, okay, like I can see why this would fit into the story. And then one in particular, if you've read this, you can probably guess, felt dumb. It was dumb. And I'm not just saying that because it was one of my, like a favorite side character. I wish we had gotten a couple more parts of like the wrap up, like Manon seeing the waste for the first time and Dorian and Kale returning to Rifthold. And I think that some of the characters that were introduced from Tower of Dawn felt really flat in Kingdom of Ash, like very one-dimensional. And I wish the Wolf Riders had been introduced earlier in the book. That felt like something just kind of like tacked on at the end. And like maybe I missed mentions of them. Like I think they were mentioned, but not in any sort of way that indicated that they were going to be returning. It felt like, and like maybe I just, since it was my first time reading this book, maybe I just missed the hints that we were going to see them. I feel like there's at least one really big moment of plot armor during one of the big battle scenes. I talk about it, I do give spoilers in my wrap-up video, so it'll be there if you really want to watch. Aelin is not really my favorite main character in a series. I'm still kind of debating whether I want to keep the series on my shelf or not. And like I felt a similar way with Ursula Le Guin's Earthsea Quartet, where the last book was the best, in my opinion. But it was really unfortunate that I had to read the others to get the full story of the fourth book. So like I felt the same way for the Throne of Glass series, where like, especially upon reread, I didn't particularly think the first 3 to 4 books were like super groundbreaking. I did think it really developed as a series, probably around Queen of Shadows, probably the last half of the series, but there did need to be that world building before. It's kind of unfortunate that I had to read all 6 or 7 books ahead of this, so my personal favorite of the series was Tower of Dawn, but I am probably in the minority for that. It's not a new favorite series of all time, that's for sure. We will continue to consider whether it stays in my house or not. My next book is somewhere in this stack. I finished 2 series this month and started a 3rd one. This is Defend the Dawn, which is the sequel to Defy the Night by Brigid Kemmerer. I go more in depth in my Complete a Series video for this series, but this was about an emissary from the neighboring kingdom of Austriary who returns to Kandala and says that he is the son of the man who was sent as a spy 6 years ago by Harriston's father. They would like to reopen trade with Kandala and are willing to trade Moonflower for steel. 6 people join Captain Blakemore on his return to Austriary in order to negotiate a trade deal with the new king of that country. I'm trying to be vague, so in case you have not read or have not finished Defy the Night, I don't give away any spoilers for that. I do have spoilers in my actual video. I read her other series, the Curse of Dark and Lonely series, and after the second one, I didn't like the male main character from the first book. So I was a little worried that I was going to have the same experience with this series, but I didn't. And then we do also get a 3rd point of view in this book. I liked the ship setting and feeling like they were on an adventure. And then we do also learn more about the history of Kandala, its relationship with Austriary, and how it got to the point of regicide and revolution. So it was a pretty decent installment. Not really middle book syndrome, because I think it was different enough based on like the setting that it didn't feel like it was just rehashing the events of the first book. I took a break from that series to read Behind the Net, which is a hockey romance by Stephanie Archer, also on KU. Pippa is hired as an assistant for the new player for the Vancouver Storm. His name's Jamie Stryker. He doesn't think he needs an assistant until he finds a dog and adopts it, and she turns out to be the girl that he had a crush on in high school. He's busy building a relationship with his new team and taking care of his mom, so he thinks he doesn't have time for a relationship. But it turns out that she had a crush on him in high school too. She doesn't think he recognizes her, so she lets it go and is just like, oh, okay, like I'll just think this to myself on the side. She has been living on her friend's couch after getting dumped by her singer ex-boyfriend and getting kicked off his tour, like being forced to return home. So she really needs the job to get back on her feet. Almost immediately after he finds out that she's staying on a friend's couch, he offers to have her move in since she'll need to stay with the dog while he's gone on like for away games anyway. They are still obviously attracted to each other after all this time, so sparks fly. The banter is really fun. The spice is pretty hot, and there's no third act breakup, which I appreciate. I'm not super into like rock star singer storylines, but Pippa's was well done. Almost immediately after finishing that book, I read The Fake Out, which is the sequel. This one follows Pippa's sister, Hazel, who is a physiotherapist or trainer for the team. Rory has just been traded to the team and was one of Jamie's friends in high school. They kind of fell out of touch, just kind of had like a falling out once they both went pro. And then they kind of, at the end of the first book, they kind of reconcile at least a little bit. Hazel was Rory's tutor from back in high school as well. And he also spends most of the first book flirting with her whenever they are in the same room together. And her ex, Connor, has also just been traded to the team. And she's assigned to be his trainer because like they don't know that they have a history. But he thinks that she pulled some strings to be assigned to him because she's still like holding out for him. She very much is not. And so she says that she's dating Rory and he agrees to be her fake boyfriend to get Connor off her case. Rory is having a rough time finding his passion for hockey again, despite recently being named captain and constantly being told that like hockey comes first. The banter was absolutely on point in this one. I liked this one more than the first one. And the funny scenes had me laughing out loud. The spice was also really good still. So during one of the away games, he's forced to room with Connor. And I guess they learned that they got like room assignments before they left. So he just starts pulling out, like he pulled out a framed photo of her and like put it on his nightstand in the hotel. And Connor just looks at it and is like, just like makes a face. And he's like, oh, I hope this is okay. And I just laughed out loud. I thought it was very funny. I'm not telling it well, but it was very funny. So I am very excited for the third one. I think that one also just came out, so hopefully the third one is coming out in the fall as well. I then followed this up by In Your Dreams, Holden Rhodes, which is also by Stephanie Archer, but from a different series. This one is set in a small town on Vancouver Island. Sadie has just inherited an inn from her aunt, but it comes with co-inheritor Holden. They met when she spent the summer at the inn when she was 16, and he was a total jerk to her the whole time, so she hadn't come back until now. She needs money to pay back the $200,000 her ex-fiance stole from her when she tried to start her own interior design business, and she attempts to get Holden to buy out her half, but he refuses because he's like, this is sketchy, like you could get so much more than this. And then she sees a How to Get a Wife search up on his computer. She makes a deal with him that she'll be his dating coach if he buys her out after they renovate the inn. They start off as like sort of friends and then become friends with benefits. She's very reasonably anti-marriage after her bad experience, and he absolutely wants to get married, which ends up being the third act breakup conflict. He also brings up something that she said when she was 16 and he was constantly being a jerk to her. I think kind of around the same time. They also get like all like close and buddy really quickly, at least in like a friendship sort of way. instead of there being any like lingering tension for why she never visited the island again after that first summer. I wish that had been the main barrier to the start of their relationship in terms of like building trust, because she tells him like what happened with her ex-fiance pretty quickly, and then the reasons for him being a jerk all summer when she was 16 were glossed over pretty quickly. He thinks about what he did, but they really only have like one brief conversation about it, and it's resolved until he brings it back up later. So, like, I think that could have been the first fight they had where she calls him out for being a jerk, and he's like, well, you said this. And she's like, yeah, because you treated me like crap all summer, so why would I want to be your friend, much less date you, if you're going to treat me that way? And then have their friendship develop from there and then turn into like friends with benefits. I think it would have been stronger to have that addressed first, and then the marriage issue once they had that level of trust. I kind of wish she had held out for not getting married, which, like, sorry, it's kind of a spoiler, but like the two hockey books had really great male leads who were like very into their partner, but not overbearing. And Holden was kind of controlling. And not just in the relationship, but like also at work. Like there was a scene where he yells at a guy and is never shown apologizing, even though I think that got resolved off page. So he was definitely not my favorite of the three books that I have read by this author. And then there was also a subplot where she like orders a vibrator. She lives in Toronto, again with a friend, like on her couch. She left a bunch of stuff in storage there to come out to like deal with her aunt's will and everything. Like didn't expect to stay very long. So she orders a vibrator and they send the wrong thing, and she tries it when she tries to throw it away. The bears get it, and it's like a running joke throughout the book. But I feel like any company would want the incorrect item returned. I know that that's not maybe not necessarily true for like personal items like that, but still it seems kind of like a rom-com kind of plot hole. Even if that wasn't a thing where she would return it, at the very least, an inn that produces trash in bear country would probably have decently bear-proof trash cans. That kind of, like, while entertaining, it kind of lost me with some practical things. The series is a set of three brothers. Holden is the third. And I do want to read the final book in the series because that one looked the most interesting of the remaining three. And they were written before the hockey series, so I think she has, you can tell that she's developed as a writer since at least this book came out. And I really enjoyed the two hockey ones. So looking forward to definitely more of the hockey ones. And then eventually I'll get to the fourth brother. Like, I think he's a firefighter, so I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But like a forestry firefighter, not like a my house is on fire firefighter, if that makes sense. The next physical book that I read was Destroy the Day. And if you have ever simultaneously been happy with the way things ended because you like the characters, but also dissatisfied because it feels like a hair convenient, same. This gave me that feeling, and I'm having a hard time because like I want to love the series. As I sit with it and like think about it, I'm like, okay, like I get like a little bit happier with it the more I think about it. Obviously this is the sequel to Defend the Dawn, final book in the Defy the Night trilogy. I don't really want to say too much since it's the final book, but again, I do go in depth in my series video. So 4 of the 6 people from Kandala make it to Australia and have to figure out a way home at the start of this. And you still get the same third point of view that appeared in the second book, which is a nice continuation. And then the way everything wrapped up was a little convenient, a little bit surface level in some ways. I did have to remind myself that this was a YA series, so I'm not necessarily going to get the same emotional depth as an adult series. Overall, I really enjoyed the characters and the world, and I think the first book is still my favorite because it had some like hidden identity Robin Hood-esque plot lines. I don't know that this series as a whole is going down as the favorite series of all time. I do think it's probably above Throne of Glass. I like the characters in this a little bit more than I like Aelin as a main character, but I like some of the characters in the Throne of Glass series more than these characters, if that makes sense. There were a couple times, I think in the middle book, where I was like, wait, whose POV am I reading from? Because it's all first person. And I think I was falling asleep at that point. So I was like, wait a second, where am I? having to do that, I was like, oh, okay. I gotta make a note of that. But overall, really enjoyed it as like an entire series. The next physical book that I read was Jadefire Gold by June C.L. Tan. This is part of my Fairy Loot catch-up quest. I got this in one of my 2021 boxes. My Fairy Loot subscription was like the last 6 months of 2021. Of those 6 boxes, I had not read 2 of the books, not including sequels, just the 6 subscription books. And this was one of them, so I decided I needed to read it, get it done. We follow An and Alton in a world where magic users are hunted down by priests that are sanctioned by the Emperor. An lives in a small desert village where she's taking care of her sick grandmother and trying to scrape by as the land produces less and less as the desert slowly claims it. She has magic that she's hiding that manifests one day when she's trying to protect herself. Unfortunately for her, the priests are in town and they start hunting her down. Alton is an exiled prince that has been in hiding. Hang on. The synopsis says lost heir. Yeah, so he has been in hiding for 8 years and has been searching for someone like her to help him win his throne back. This one was kind of weird for me. Like, the vibes were on point, and I definitely got the wuxia, like Zhansha inspirations in the world and plot, and like loved those. Some of the character thought process and some of the relationship development between the 2 main characters, and then some of the events didn't feel super fleshed out, which made it a little bit less memorable to me. And I did really like the main side characters as well. The 2 main characters also met in her desert town. He was passing through and she was in the market one day, but they end up going their separate ways at that point, which isn't really typical of most novels, and I enjoyed that. I definitely told Damien, I was like, I don't know where this is going now that they have separated. I could absolutely see this being a really fun TV show, like very aesthetically pleasing. And I do think that this could have been a really well done duology to allow for some of that like fleshing out of characters and ideas and things like that. And some of the ending made it feel like that could be a possibility, but I think it's currently listed as a standalone novel. And I do think it was the author's debut, and I think that her second book was just in another Fairy Loot box. I think it was her second novel. Don't quote me on that one though. So overall, I enjoyed it. Would recommend if you like Asian inspired fantasy. But I think in the long run, I don't know that it's going to stick with me as well as some of the other Asian inspired fantasy that I have read. So, and I did like the writing style was very easy to read. I'm excited to read the second book that I have from the author. So we'll see how that one goes. The next book I read was Spy Family Volume 11. This just came out. Oh, March. Okay. Maybe that means another one will come out soon. Probably in like July or something. So yeah, this was perfect. For those of you who don't know, the overall premise of this series is that there's a spy named Twilight who is tasked with connecting with a high-level government official in like the opposing country, but this official is really secretive and only attends school events for children at their like elite private school. So Twilight, who takes the name Lloyd Forger, has to build a family and find a kid and a wife to pose as a student at this academy. The child that he finds is an orphan named Anya, and she can read minds. And his wife Yor is a city hall kind of employee by day, like she's like a clerk, I think, and an assassin by night. They eventually adopt a dog named Bond, who can see the future. So with this wild mix of characters, Lloyd gets Anya enrolled in Eden Academy. Since she read his mind, she knows that he wants her to be friends with Damien Desmond, who is the son of the official that Lloyd is targeting. And this would help get him an introduction to Damien's father. There are a lot of school and family events, as well as assassin/spy things that have gone on over the previous 10 volumes that are just like goofy and funny. This volume kind of maintains that same overall tone, and we get a little bit of Lloyd at work, and then there's an event that takes place during a school field trip. And on the field trip, we get a lot of Anya and Damien. And then at the end, we see something that is like kind of a confirmation of a character's personality, but also kind of a dark moment that made me more excited to, like, even more excited than normal to see where the next volume goes. This is one of my favorite series because of like how wholesome and goofy it is. There are some darker things mixed in that I think the mangaka does really well, and this volume was another like great installment for the series. So we'll definitely be continuing on with this. The next book I read was Sakamoto Days, also volume 11. So this series follows Taro Sakamoto, who is a retired hitman that now lives with his wife and daughter in a small town. And he's just living a quiet life. He's super out of shape. But then the organization that he used to work for puts a bounty on his head, and former associates of his try to collect the bounty and disrupt his idyllic lifestyle. So he's able to thwart the first few attempts on his life, and then the story delves more into the motivations behind why they put a bounty on his head and all the things he needs to uncover in order to go back to his quiet life. The first few volumes were a little more lighthearted, and the later volumes have gotten more violent and dark. This one was no exception to that. There are a lot of different assassins with different methods, weapons, techniques that are pretty cool. And like I could definitely see this being turned into, I think it's supposed to be an anime at some point. There's this guy who fights with a hammer, and I think there's a martial arts movie where it's a girl who fights with a hammer. I think she might be blind. I think it might even be like really uncreatively named, like Hammer Girl or something. But that's a total digression. So like it reminds me a lot of like martial arts movies like that. And it's pretty cool to like see the way that our main characters have to like overcome these different things as they fight each other. I don't know if this was my favorite volume of the series, but it's also in the middle of an arc. So there's a lot happening, and then you just get dropped back into the action at the start of the volume. So like you're kind of like just smack in the middle of things already. I will be continuing with the series once the next one comes out, which I suspect is probably soon. If you enjoy like spy and assassin things, like this is great. So the next book I read was Marriage Toxin Volume 2. Sorry, it's just looking at the cover. The cover is so goofy. This was a lot of fun, and it was kind of what I was hoping for with Sakamoto Days in terms of tone. This is a lot goofier than Sakamoto Days. At least like the current volumes, like earlier Sakamoto Days was more lighthearted. We follow Hikaru Gero, who is a master of the Poison Clan, and he is on the hunt for a wife so he can produce an heir for his grandmother. He didn't initially want to get married, but his grandmother, who is the head of the clan, was going to force his sister into having an heir, even though his sister is already in a committed relationship with a woman. In the first volume, he meets Mei Kinosaki, who is a marriage swindler that he enlists to help him find a romantic partner because he has no idea how to talk to women. She decides that they have to figure out what makes him charming and use that skill to meet women. Gero takes a job to save an art thief in the first volume, and that continues into the second volume a little bit. And then he goes on to a different job once that one is finished. We also get a little bit more insight into his upbringing and get to see what his childhood was like. His second job is being a bodyguard for the heiress to a company who just wants to make friends at school. And at both jobs, he has encountered other master assassins from different clans, and we see how he interacts with each and how he like uses his abilities against their abilities. The series it's really fun, and it makes me laugh. So far it's closer in tone to, it's like if Spy Family is here, it's like here, and then Sakamoto Days is like over here. So it's not like super close to Spy Family in tone, but like because of the humor, it feels a little more in that direction than in Sakamoto Days. At least the current Sakamoto Days. So I will definitely be continuing as the series comes out. And then the last 3 physical books that I have are A Man and His Cat, Volume 2, which, like, look at this. Look at this man. Look at this man and his cat. He's perfect. They're both perfect. So I read that one, which is like more slice of life adventures with Fukumaru, and we get a little bit more of Mr. Kanda's backstory, and then we see him a little bit more out and about with friends and at work. And then this is volume 3. Ugh. He's so cute. They're so cute together. Look at him. Oh my god. The series as a whole follows a music teacher named Fukuya Kanda, and he adopts his first cat as an older adult. The cat, Fukumaru, had been sitting in a pet store for a long time and thought he was never going to get adopted until Mr. Kanda came along. As the story progresses, I thought it was it's still really slice of life, but there is a little bit of a plot to keep things moving. So we see how their relationship grows and how Fukumaru helps him come out of his shell and like make new friends at work and be a little more open with like his established friends. So it's such a heartwarming story, and if you like cats at all, this will make you smile. I love the 4-panel sections that just show like goofy things that cats do. So yeah, this one's funny. So he gets this from work, and then there's ones about like hiding in boxes and like sleeping together, and it's just like a little moment, like a little slice of peace in this wild world. If you like cats and you like manga, here you go. I'm definitely going to be continuing with the series. Just need to go get more volumes. I don't know if it's a completed series or not. So the final book that I have to talk about is an audiobook. It is Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Angela Y. Davis, and it's a collection of essays, interviews, and speeches. She is a renowned scholar and activist and has been involved in struggles worldwide to end injustices and oppression. She connects various worldwide movements to each other and shows how working towards solution in one place or movement should include solutions in other places. She addresses things like Palestine, South Africa, like the Ferguson riots, Black Lives Matter, workers' rights, the American prison system, Black feminism, militarization of the police, capitalism, and more. There are a lot of really compelling arguments and a lot of ways that things are connected that I hadn't realized. Like, she talks about how the same company that runs prison systems in America also profits from the oppression in Palestine and like probably other places as well. Even though this is something I went to school for, like there was a lot of information that I like interconnectedness that I like wasn't aware of already. There were a lot of things that I was like, oh yeah, okay, this sounds really familiar. So yeah, and then I also really enjoyed learning more about her background and experiences in activism. She was part of the Black Panther Party. She's been in prison. She's, been on the FBI Most Wanted list. So it's a lot. She has some stories, I'm sure. The book was published in 2016 and addresses issues that are still relevant and ongoing today. So if you're interested in learning more about some of the issues and possible ways to get involved, I would definitely recommend checking this out. I listened to the audiobook. I would recommend, if you like audiobooks, checking it out because she is the narrator. And so you really get a sense of her voice. I got it through my Libro FM subscription to try and read it for Jess from Jess Owens's book club, which she calls Book Community Read. I think this was the February book, so clearly I did not get it done in time. But she also had a live discussion with Angela from Literature Science Alliance and Ray from Ray Reads that I will link below, and I'll link accounts and stuff as well. So yeah, that was my May reading list. This was definitely not my best month, but definitely not my worst. It's probably my second highest in terms of like page count. I think February is still going to remain up there unless I like get a ton more reading done. Hope you all had a good reading month for May, and we'll continue to have good reading months going into summer. Well, at least summer here in America. I am pretty excited. Not that I have like any extra time or just more daylight, which makes it feel like I have longer days. I have some plans for June that include my first Broken Binding series, and then some manga, and then I have some other things that I would like to finish and continue working on. So we'll see how productive I am in June. I know July is going to be pretty heinous in terms of time, just because I have a family trip and then I have a work trip. So that's going to take up a lot of my time then. So I'm just trying to get as much read in June as possible. So we'll see how it pans out. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.